Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. So more cable operators and fiber operators are starting to stretch past the gigabit broadband mark. In fact, one fiber operator has said they're not offering anything less than that. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So I saw a few stories come up that I wanted to comment on. These are fairly recent. Again, about cable operators now, more are starting to announce that they're getting into multi-gig speeds. And then fiber operators, they've been announcing that, obviously, but some of them are really starting to push the envelope now. And one, as I mentioned, which I'll show here in a minute, has said, hey, if you're offering anything under a gig, then you're just not keeping up with the times. So here you see Mediacom gets the DOCSIS 4.0 party started in Iowa. It's interesting that it's Iowa because today happens to be the Iowa caucuses on the calendar. In fact, it's, I think, 18 below zero today as people go out and vote in the caucuses there. So Mediacom launched its first DOCSIS 4.0 market, lighting up service in West Des Moines, Iowa, and laying plans to upgrade at least 6 more cities as part of its 10G upgrade plan. 10G being it's kind of thought to be 10 gigabit per second upload download, something that Cable Labs came out with as a kind of response to 5G when 5G first started coming out, and there was a lot of buzz about that. But unlikely that there's going to be 10 gig symmetrical over hybrid fiber coax or HFC cable plans, but 6 gig symmetrical possible. And as you can see here, some are doing over a gig in some cases. Now in this case, these guys are doing, I guess we'll see here. So they're going to be rolling out 1 gig and 2 gig speed tiers, symmetrical. So they're doing one form of 10G or DOCSIS 4.0, which would be full duplex, which allows them to more easily offer a symmetrical offering. So you see here, again, along with the cable update, the operator is rolling out new symmetrical 1 gig and 2 gig. Thomas Larson, Mediacom's SVP of Government and Public Relations, told Fierce Telecom its upgrade project in the city spans 32,000 homes and businesses. While the network has been upgraded, though, Larson noted it does not yet have DOCSIS 4.0 modems in its inventory, meaning it can't yet take advantage of the full speeds offered by the next-gen technology. So that is important that as cable operators do this, as they make these changes on their cable network, their infrastructure, they also need to get some new CPE to the subscriber. But this is still much less expensive than them overbuilding their HFC plant, their hybrid fiber coax, with straight fiber to the curb or fiber to the prem, because you're talking about a difference. If they're making these kinds of changes, you're talking about a difference of a few $100s per subscriber or per home passed versus a couple of $1,000s if they were going to do fiber. So that's why cable operators are doing this. It keeps them very competitive. So it's much less likely that somebody will come in and find it easy to steal their customers if they're offering speeds that are 1 and 2 gig, especially symmetrical like this. Because again, it just takes that marketing checkbox away from the fiber operators. The fiber operators can still come in and do faster speeds more easily, but you get to a point where nobody 1 and 2 gig is plenty for people right now. It says here. Still, Mediacom is pressing on with its upgrades, planning rollouts in the cities of Bertram, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, Fairfax, Hiawatha, and Marion, as well as portions of unincorporated Lynn County in Iowa. Asked about the timeline for these deployments, Larson said, "We look at these as roughly 2-year projects. As nodes get upgraded, we will be able to turn on sections of each market, so areas will be moving to 10G on a rolling basis." So this is not something that's taking place right now, but you can see here that they're well into their plans and starting to make these changes. But again, they still got some infrastructure upgrades to make, especially, they need the 4.0 modems as well. Back in February, Mediacom CTO J.R. Walden told Fierce that the persistence of legacy RF set-top boxes in its markets was a limiting factor for its DOCSIS 4 upgrades. Larson's confirmed this is still the case. So there you've got them using old kind of the analog RF set-top boxes. So that is probably what they're running into there, is probably the use of spectrum for these old legacy video channels. So they have less spectrum to use for data is what I'm thinking is going on there. It says we do need to swap out the old set-top boxes on a node-by-node basis before we make the switch over to 10G. If we can overlash fiber to existing utility pole attachments versus building fiber underground, that can have a great impact on our construction timeline, he said. However, he added there's also currently fierce competition for contract labor, which is another factor determining how fast it can move. And that's a factor, frankly, for anyone right now trying to deploy fiber, because there are a lot of projects going on, and it's going to be even more so as the BEAD funding gets released from various states. You're going to have even more competition for getting a hold of contractors who can deploy fiber for sure. So from start to finish, we look at these as roughly 2-year project. Oh, I just said that. In addition to upgrading its legacy cable assets, Mediacom has been deploying a combination of fixed wireless access and fiber in expansion markets. And a lot of cable operators are doing that because, again, while the cost is much less to upgrade their cable provider or their cable subscribers where they've got cable, coax cable already running to the end user, in areas where they don't have service yet, it's really actually cheaper for them to go ahead and more reliable for them to go ahead and just do fiber straight to those customers. So they're looking at that. In areas where it has fiber, such as Delaware, the operator has a 2 gig service on offer from the jump. So they can do 2 gig symmetrical with no problem there, just going over the fiber. Asked about uptake of the speed tier, Larson said it's still relatively new, but it has seen high interest in certain markets. These tend to be in areas where people were previously relying on cellular service with low data limits. So far, Mediacom has leaned into the full duplex approach to DOCSIS 4.0 rather than the extended spectrum DOCSIS. Both variants are set to deliver 10G capabilities for cable operators in different ways. So it mentions here what the difference is. So this is a good explanation. So ESD involves adding more spectrum, jumping from a max of 1.2 gig in DOCSIS 3.1 to 1.8 gigahertz. Meanwhile, full duplex sticks with a 1.2 gigahertz size pipe, but uses noise cancellation to allow upstream and downstream traffic to be transmitted over the same spectrum. So ordinarily in a cable plant, you've got part of the spectrum allocated to downstream, part of the spectrum allocated to upstream. And most of that spectrum is allocated to the downstream because that's what most of us are using as far as when we're consuming internet. There's not as much upload that we're doing or upstream kinds of stuff. So that's why when you see a cable package, you might see, a gig down and 50 meg up or something like that, because they've got a much smaller section that they're using for upstream. But what extended spectrum DOCSIS does is it adds more spectrum overall up to this 1.8 gigahertz of spectrum, and then a lot of the upstream is expanded there. So it allows you to do more spectrum. You can do OFDMA, which allows you to bond the upstream channels together, like you can bond on OFDM, you can bond downstream channels, so you can do these wider channels and get more speed for folks on the upstream as well as the downstream. But in general, it's you're still going to see, when people are doing extended spectrum DOCSIS ESD, you'll still probably see a faster download speed than you will an upload speed. You can do symmetrical, but you're going to have a lower speed symmetrical than you might on full duplex, where you're going to use the same spectrum, not breaking it out upstream and downstream for the most part, but you've got areas of the same spectrum where you're transmitting in both directions, kind of like you can on fiber, bidirectional, symmetrical, and then again, as it mentions, it uses kind of noise cancellation so that you don't have the packets colliding as they're going over the same spectrum. In 2022, Mediacom announced it would use CommScope's RD 2322 RXD devices operating in remote MAC-PHY mode within the vendor's OM4120 optical nodes, which allows it to upgrade from 1 gig of spectrum to 1.2 gig. However, Mediacom's been reluctant to fully commit to full duplex, with a spokesperson previously telling Fierce that its hitherto focus on the approach is more about timing and equipment availability than specific commitment to FDX versus ESD. Both are possible later on. What they're talking about there, this is where they're doing, when they talk about remote PHY and remote MAC-PHY, that's where they're extending their cable plant. They're extending the fiber out as close as possible to the customer, called going fiber deep. And they're doing that through either remote PHY or remote MAC-PHY. And you see here an RMD, or remote MAC-PHY device, is an all-in-one box distributed CMTS solution that moves both the MAC and the PHY, or physical functionality, out of the head end. So it's basically taking a small CMTS, which is normally what you have in the head end that connects your cable modem customers, and is pushing it out in the field. So you have a smaller CMTS or smaller CMTSs out in the field closer to customers rather than one big piece of iron sitting in your head end that's delivering broadband to lots of different areas. And then you've got you can also do remote PHY or an RPD, that improves head-end density and power efficiency by moving the PHY functionality out of the head-end, or the physical connections. You still got the MAC layer back in the head-end in that case. And this CommScope here, you can see it looks just like a node. And this can do either the remote PHY devices or the remote MAC PHY devices, where you've got either this being a small CMTS that can be hanging out there in the field close to the customers, or these remote PHY devices, the RPDs. And what that does is it allows, rather than having more coax cable in their network and also analog fiber, they can do digital fiber and go further out toward the subscriber. So they're reducing the amount of RF interference that they can get in their cable plant. They've got digital fiber going closer to the customers so they can get better speeds, better performance, less maintenance that they've got to do by doing this here, which is called distributed access architecture. Basically, is what they're talking about doing there. They're distributing access either through these RPDs, these remote PHY devices, or remote MAC devices, remote MAC PHY, where it's actually like a CMTS out in the field. So that's distributed access architecture they're doing there. So let's see. However, Mediacom's been reluctant. I mentioned that. Other cable operators such as Charter and Cox are taking the ESD approach, that's the extended spectrum DOCSIS approach, while Comcast is also leveraging the FDX method. And we've seen that Comcast they've been really pushing forward with full duplex and have been announcing some symmetrical multi-gig speeds in markets, whereas Charter and Cox are doing this extended spectrum DOCSIS. They've been announcing higher downstream and upstream speeds, but not so much symmetrical. Comcast was the first to deploy DOCSIS 4.0 in October, when it announced customers in Colorado Springs could sign up for a new line of symmetrical multi-gig service. As for how Charter is progressing on its upgrades to prepare for DOCSIS 4.0, the company has initiated all its Step 1 markets at this point. The first phase of network upgrades will see Charter implement high-split architecture to increase its usable spectrum to 1.2 gigahertz across 15% of its footprint. Fisher said Charter will complete some phase 1 upgrades by the end of this year and finish the rest of them inside 2024. The article, was this the end of last year? Let's see what we're talking about here. That was, December. So this was something I saw earlier in December. And then we've got WOW. Wide Open West offers 2 gig broadband in trial markets thanks to cable network upgrades. So again, this is a cable operator that's upgrading their DOCSIS infrastructure, but they're also doing fiber deployments where they can as well. So competitive cable operator WOW has upgraded its network infrastructure in part of Panama City, Florida, and plans to offer service supporting 2 gig downstream and 200 meg upstream to a select group of customers. So you can see here, they're not talking about doing symmetrical, but 2 gig down and 200 meg up. 200 meg up is plenty for most people. So if you got 2 gig down and 200 meg up, you shouldn't be concerned when you see a fiber operator come in and saying, hey, we've got 2 gig symmetrical. I mean, you could order that service, but if you've already got the service with WOW, then there's not really a reason to change unless you're having some kind of a quality issue or a customer service issue. The company said it will announce network upgrades in additional markets in the near future. WOW is the latest cable company to upgrade its network to support multi-gig speeds and to boost upstream speeds. The goal is to address shortcomings that have made cable companies less competitive in markets where another provider has deployed fiber broadband. And again, that's because they can offer these much faster download speeds now and very decent upload speeds, or even symmetrical speeds, as we saw using full duplex. And again, as they do these distributed access architecture deployments with remote MAC PHY and remote PHY, they are getting more reliable in their network as well as they get more fiber in the network, more especially digital fiber. The company was able to increase the speeds that the network can support by deploying distributed access architecture over the company's existing HFC infrastructure. HFC uses fiber to a neighborhood node. From there, the cable company uses coax to connect to the customer homes. And that's really the expensive part. If you were going to, you might be like, why don't they just rip out that last mile of coax and go fiber? Well, that's where it gets expensive, because you've got to touch every single home, not just with a modem, let's say a new 4.0 modem, but you've got to rip out that coax, put in fiber, get in new equipment, yes, as well, but also inside wiring. You've got maybe some new provisioning that you might have to do, a new provisioning system. But there are things, for example, we're offering like a DOCSIS provisioning adapter for Nokia fiber, where if somebody's a cable operator and they want to deploy Nokia, they can come to us and we can actually let them provision those fiber devices as if they're DOCSIS devices. It looks just like a DOCSIS device, so then you need to roll out a new provisioning system and retrain everybody, and their billing system, all that. They can just continue to provision as if it was a DOCSIS modem, even though it's an ONT, a fiber device. But even that, for example, is a cost a lot of times. DAA pushes network intelligence closer to the network edge by deploying additional technology at the neighborhood node. In doing so, it improves the signal-to-noise ratio, thereby supporting faster speed. So again, you lose a lot of those RF issues that you would have over a coax cable. Deploying DAA is one of several network upgrades that cable companies are making to support DOCSIS 4.0, the next gen of cable modem technology. DOCSIS 4.0 should provide a further upstream and downstream speed boost as well as other benefits. DOCSIS 4.0 has seen limited commercial deployment, but should see a boom in 2024 as the technology becomes more widely available. It's a key element of a range of cable industry initiatives that the industry has dubbed 10G, again, 10th generation, but not 10th generation, actually 10 gigabit per second is what it's supposed to be, and which WOW references in its release. Those initiatives are aimed at eventually supporting speeds of 10 gig downstream, but upstream speeds will be somewhat less. So yeah, they're not going to be able to do 10 gig symmetrical. And even 10 gig downstream might be a bit of a challenge. As we plan for the ever-increasing consumer demand for bandwidth, our goal is to proactively enhance our network and offer customers our most advanced technology at any given time, said Gary Nielsen, Senior VP at WOW, in a prepared statement. In addition to delivering greater capability and high-speed data, the technologies being tested will help minimize the need for future upgrades. We look forward to further validating the enhanced capabilities of our network with this trial in Panama City. WOW has a strong presence in Florida for many years, and it's important to us to ensure our legacy markets are getting the fastest, highest quality service we have to offer. The trials in Panama City are an essential step in our broader plan, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's what WOW is doing, and they are doing it through extended spectrum DOCSIS, not through the full duplex, which is why they're not offering a symmetrical kind of offering at this point. And then we've got this, which I thought was interesting. So this is Wire 3. This was a press release they did. They declared that megabit speeds are obsolete. So they are coming out and saying, hey, if you're offering something less than a gig, then you're not with it. See here, Wire 3, they're a Central Florida-based fiber to the home provider. They have sunset any plans lower than 1 gig on January 1st of this year, currently offering residential internet speeds of 10 gig or up to 10 gig. Wire 3 is drawing a line in the sand when it comes to acceptable bandwidth. Just like when the world transitioned from dial-up internet to faster options in the early 2000s, the time's come to make the leap to the next phase of connectivity, said Ryan Dendiebel, SVP of Sales and Marketing. Fiber optic internet affords consumers freedom from lagging, buffering, and throttled upload speeds, but other companies are still offering 300 meg, 100 meg, and even 25 meg plans. It's time to stop accepting megabits in a gigabit world and to lower the barrier of entry for people to embrace the coming technology, says CEO Jai Ramachandran. So again, this is a dig at cable companies, as well as even some fiber companies are certainly offering maybe 300 meg or 100 meg plans. But you got 25 meg in there. So they're talking about, again, some companies that might be offering maybe a gig down and 25 meg up because they don't have enough spectrum. They haven't done the upgrades maybe to do high splits, those kinds of things to be able to get over 25 meg. However, I think I understand what they're doing here. They're trying to say, hey, we're at the top of the game. But the problem is to be able to, how do they put it here? To lower the barrier entry to people to embrace the coming technologies. Well, one of the barrier of entries is price. So if you can offer you could offer somebody a 50 by 50 or 100 by 100 symmetrical service at a lower price, you should do that. And their lowest price offering, as we see here, is a $60 per month offering. But why not offer 100 meg? If you can do 60, if you can do a gig, 60 per month, why not offer 100 symmetrical for 30 a month? Maybe 50 symmetrical for $10 a month. And people who have an issue paying for broadband can then get reasonable, certainly broadband that will allow them to participate in the global broadband economy, certainly at 100 meg and even 50 meg symmetrical, they might not be able to stream 4K video to their big screen TV, but if they are low income, that's not what they're looking for. They may be looking for a low price and being able to get online and be able to do school, and maybe if they get a job to be able to work remotely, those kinds of things. You can certainly Zoom and do all kinds of things that you can do over multi-gig packages. If you've got 50 by 50, you may, like I say, you may not be able to do lots of entertainment kinds of streaming, but why not offer a lower speed at a lower price? I don't see a problem with that. In fact, I think that's a good thing, especially with the Affordable Connectivity Program maybe going away. We don't know yet. There's kind of up in the air whether that's going to be funded again. But with that going away, having something where people can pay $30 a month and get good broadband service, or less, even less than that, and get decent broadband service to be able to operate on the internet reasonably, I think that should be done. So I'm not a fan of this approach. So you see here again, they're doing 1 gig at 60 per month and lowering the price of their 10 gig plans to $100 a month. That's certainly a great price for 10 gigs, but who needs 10 gigs? If somebody can spend $100 a month and get 10 gigs, they might do that. But I think most people would spend $60 a month to get 1 gig because that's more than enough for what almost anybody needs at home. Mentions here their plans will be automatically upgraded to the tier that corresponds with their existing rate. So if somebody's been paying, what would it be? Maybe $90. Maybe it was, I don't know what they were paying for a gig, but let's say they're paying $80 or $100 a month. Then I suppose they'd be upgraded to the 10 gig, but I'd want to downgrade and get a lower cost if it were me. Ramachandran states, we want to show our communities we are serious about enabling their choice and future-proofing their internet capabilities rather than only giving them what they need today. Well, again, I think the better thing is to give them what they want today, not what they need, and they might want something lower priced at a lower speed. So that's that press release. By the way, I linked to everything that I'm showing here in the description if you want to check that out. And I was going to show this really is some good pricing. $60 a month is great for a gig, so I got to give them props for that. Certainly $100 a month for 10 gigs is great. I don't know how many people, if you can pay 60 and get a gig, I don't know how many people are going to want to pay 100 and get 10. They don't need the 10, but that's really good pricing. I pulled up, we've got Google Fiber's been deploying faster speeds now, like 2 gig symmetrical in some markets, and I think even higher in some markets. Comcast has been doing 2 gig symmetrical. EPB, Chattanooga, has always been a leader as far as broadband and municipal broadband. And we always think about municipal broadband being the least expensive broadband you can get, but quite often it's competitive. It's not necessarily really cheap. It depends on who it is. But you can see here at EPB, when you get their plans, so they've got 300 meg for about $58 a month. So it's not that cheap. Again, they could certainly offer something less expensive. I think they do have some packages for low income folks, which is good, and a lot of providers will do that. But here, what they've got advertised is they've got the 300 meg for $58. You can get a gig for $68. That compares to $60 from Wire3. 2.5 gig for $98. And then they've got a 10 gig for $300 per month. And again, this 10 gig is what Wire3 is offering for $100 per month. So just about the same as their 2.5 gig here. So, and then they've got 25 gig for $1,500 a month. So these folks are using Nokia's 25 gig PON product, so they can put in different cards. They can put in a GPON card. They can put in an XGS PON card. And if somebody wants a 25 gig, they can put in a 25 gig card. If somebody's willing to pay $1,500 a month, that would obviously be more relevant to a big business versus a residential customer. And frankly, even these other plans, again, residential customers would be just fine with one of these two here. Not much difference in price, $10 more per month for the gig versus the 300 meg with Chattanooga's broadband product. So as you can see, broadband speeds are increasing. You can see the cable operators are trying their best to keep up, and they're actually doing a very good job of that with their existing infrastructure. So again, they've got two choices. One is to rip out their current last mile coax to the customer kind of service and put in fiber, but that's going to cost them 10 times what it would cost to upgraded something along the lines of DOCSIS 3.1 to DOCSIS 4.0 and do the extended spectrum DOCSIS or full duplex, do the distributed access architecture to get fiber deep, they can get much faster speeds and have much less cost to that. But again, if they're going to a greenfield area, they're going to be doing fiber all the way. So they know fiber is the future. It's just that they've got this existing infrastructure they need to support and upgrade. Thanks for joining me today. Hopefully this was interesting. If so, if you give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, ring the bell, and you'll be notified when I'm live. I'll see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.